Hello and welcome to day 4 of our Allegro sew along. So today we're going to be focusing on the waistband. So I'll wait a few moments, let some friends join us. I'm going to clean up the mess I have happening over here right now. As my sew along weeks go on, my space gets more and more cluttered. So I'm trying to stay on top of it, but that just doesn't always happen. I should leave this off. Okay, so our waistband. So, let me grab. Alright, we're going to be sewing our waistband today. This is what we're going to end up with. So we have a 1.5 inch wide waistband. It has a casing and a functional drawstring. And yeah, super awesome. I like the details of the waistband a lot. So one thing with that drawstring waistband though, we have to sew a buttonhole. And I know that buttonholes can be intimidating. I completely understand. I was at a point, I had already been sewing for several years and I still didn't want to do buttonholes. But once you learn them, once you learn your machine, they get easier and easier. So most machines now will pretty much do an automatic buttonhole. You set the setting, you put on your buttonhole foot, push the button and it goes. Push the pedal, it goes. So you do need a buttonhole foot. If you don't have a buttonhole foot, if you don't have an automatic buttonhole stitch on your machine, you can do it with a zigzag stitch. But I'm going to talk about sewing it with a buttonhole stitch on your machine. Most of them require a buttonhole foot. Buttonhole feet are pretty universal in how they work. So right here, there's that metal piece. Can you see that? That's where we'll attach the buttonhole foot to the shank. They have this area in the back. See how that's adjustable? You put your button in there and that helps determine what size buttonhole your machine is going to stitch. So we don't have a button because we're just making the hole to make the drawstring. So you can really choose how wide or how large your buttonhole is. So I'm just going to close that down to about there. It would fit, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch button. So it's not very big, but we don't need a really big buttonhole. So we're going to attach our buttonhole foot. Just like, there we go. And then the next step, there's usually a lever that pulls down from underneath, from the throat of your machine. And there's a lever that pulls down. And you need to make sure that that lever is pulled down all the way and completely engaged. So what that lever does, in correspondence with that adjustable area that we were playing with in the back that you can fit your different size buttons in, those two things work together to determine how large of a buttonhole you're after. So I know you don't have a really great view of my machine from there. To keep the flow and to keep people from possibly getting a little seasick feeling from going, picking the phone up to move it. There is a video on the blog, I linked to it today, and it has some really nice close-ups of attaching the buttonhole foot and lowering that lever to get everything to work how you need it. So now we're going to sew our buttonholes. You do need interfacing. Interfacing is probably one of the biggest things that influences how easily and how nicely your buttonholes are going to turn out. You really, really, really need to interface your buttonholes. That gives your fabric some stability because those stitches are so dense. You need that, otherwise what happens is your fabric gets shoved into the throat of your machine, or it doesn't feed through properly and it jams up. So you really need to have some interfacing. I like SF 101, and I thought I had a scrap over here, but no, I'm not finding it. It's just a really, it's real lightweight woven interfacing. It will be kind of rough on one side. That side's the glue. You place that side down and attach it. So my screen is being really weird. Are we good? Are we live? Is everybody catching this? Can I get like a hello or something? I'm not seeing what I normally see when I do these. So I'm gonna wait a moment and see. I don't want to be attaching an entire waistband and then find out that the video didn't work properly. I'm not seeing any. Okay, let's see. You guys close. Ah! I see my live icon. I see numbers. I have no comments coming across. Let's see. Nope, that still doesn't close that. I tried to wave at Tammy. I don't know if that worked. Okay. All right. Thanks, Tammy. Okay. All right. We're going to keep going. I don't know why my comments are not going through. I will go through and try to answer everything after I finish and post the video. I'll go through the comments and answer them. Oh, thank you, Tammy. I don't know what's going on with my comments. All right. Ow! I just stabbed myself with a pin. Okay. All right. We got questions answered. Okay. We're going to go on. All right. SF101, iron that onto the wrong side of your waistband. Those markings right there, those are the buttonhole markings. So these big old bold capital I's, that's your buttonhole marking. You need to transfer that onto your fabric. So I like to transfer it to the back side because I can see it easily. And then I'm going to get that, and I'll just take that pin out right now. And then I like to sew my buttonholes from the right side, which I know that I just marked the back, but it's so that I can see them easily. So now what I'm doing is I poked through the fabric and placed a pin right there, and that's going to mark the bottom of my buttonhole. So just put the foot right over it, and then I took the pin out. You have to take the pin out. And then select your buttonhole foot. It usually looks like a big bold rectangle. And then everything's engaged. And then just sew. Like I said, it will pretty much do it on its own. Some machines have what's called a 3-step buttonhole, and it will stop and prompt you to select the next stage. Alright, my bobbin thread pulled up a little bit, but that does happen because it's so dense. If you're particular, which typically I am, I would match my bobbin thread to that so that that doesn't happen. So now I'm just sewing the second one. So we have our 2 buttonholes. So that thread, what you can do, Sharpie makes these fabric markers. And what you can do is just touch real lightly. They have, I think it came in a pack of just black and then primaries, so red, blue. I think there's a green, maybe a yellow. And see, color it in. So now we need to cut our buttonholes. So there's a couple ways to do this. One thing that is often used is a seam ripper. So the thing with the seam ripper is that it's very easy to lose control and rip all the way through the end. So if you put a pin right before that bar tack at the end, you can stop your, it'll stop the seam ripper. So just take your seam ripper, shove it in to the buttonhole, just like that, and then just push. And if you get a little wild and crazy, that pin will stop it. Say I can't go any further. And that opens the buttonhole. Another thing that I like to do is I'll take my rotary cutter and right on my cutting mat, I'll open the blade up and then just push it in and then use it as a chisel. So these buttonholes are a little too small for that though, but there is a buttonhole chisel thing. I actually have one. I never dig it out. I just use that rotary cutter or the seam ripper. Alright, so there's our buttonholes. If you need to go a little bit farther, just get some little snips and finish clipping it in, or snipping it in place. And now we're going to sew the sides of our waistband. Alright, back to pattern markings. You want to watch that you're attaching the waistbands the right direction. So the bottoms are towards the bottoms, tops are to the tops. So that's why I say those pattern markings are really important. You'll also notice that there's a little bit of an angle on our side seams, so that it angles inward towards the top. Oh. Buttonhole foot off, universal foot on, and go back to a straight stitch. And then just sew the side seams. And you're going to do this with both the lining and the main waistbands. On the lining, you may want, and I say may, to leave a gap on one side so that you can insert your elastic. I have the hardest time doing that. One, I'll sew up both side seams and totally forget. And two, it gets, like, when I'm trying to press my seams and stuff, it gets wonky. It doesn't close up nicely. I do sew all four of those seams completely shut, and then when I'm ready to insert my elastic, I take the seam ripper and rip it open. So, but Tammy does instruct you to leave a gap on the lining right in the middle there to insert your elastic. So now we're going to sew the waistband lining and the main waistband together after we press our side seams. Alright. I like to press mine going in opposite. Cord on my iron got stuck. Going into opposite directions. So I'll press, like the lining, I'll press it towards the back, and then the main, I'll press it towards the front. And that allows me to nest the seams, is what it's called. It's a term that's used in quilting a lot. And it allows you to place your seam allowances in opposite directions, and it reduces bulk. So you could press these seams open if you'd like. But I find it tedious to press seams open, so I try to avoid it at all costs. Just laying it all out there. But you can do whatever works for you for those. Open seams also, it creates a weaker seam allowance because the threads pull on each other more. There's no fabric backing it. So I have my seam allowances pressed, and now you want to mark that bottom of the back waistband so that you make sure you put them together right. You want to make sure that tops are together and bottoms are together. No, I just turned that one right side up. Okay, you're going to have one inside out and one right side out. Match up the backs and match up the front. So you've got a lot of things that you have to really pay attention and make sure they all correspond. Here's what the nested seam allowance is. So the top one, the seam allowance is pointing that way, and the bottom is pointing that way. And it nests them together and it locks it together. Okay. So now, just going through, I'll leave that one there. I'm still leaving the bottom back marked. Ooh, that was a hard word to put together. Okay. So I'm just pinning these together, and we're going to sew the top of the waistband and waistband lining together all the way around. And just with the straight stitch. And so you're going to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. That felt like the longest seam ever. Alright, so there we have it. And then we're going to open that up and press the seam allowance towards the lining side. So you can see right there what that nested seam looks like. And so you don't have all those layers going in one direction, creating a lot of excess bulk on one side of your waistband. So I'm just giving it a quick press before I open it up, and that helps it lay flatter as you're pressing it. I'm being a rebel and not using my pressing cloth. And so just open it up and press that seam allowance towards the lining. You definitely want to take the time to press this. It will make everything go smoother as you're understitching and all of that. Helps your waistband hold its shape and everything. Excuse me. It's odd to not like answer questions and stuff. I really am missing that right now, you guys. I'm very thankful that Tammy was able to join and help out with that. I missed that interaction. Alright. So press towards the lining side. Now we're going to top stitch. We'll understitch that seam allowance to the lining. So again, just a straight stitch. And what that does is it secures the seam allowance to the lining, and it also helps keep the lining from rolling as your, if you swipe up, there's no comments when I swipe up. It keeps that lining from rolling over and poking out. It's like my comments are, or my like live notifications are frozen. The only thing that I see is like people joining, and all of my comments are frozen. But it's okay. I'll spend some time going through them. showing that seam allowance. You see that line right there? That's our understitching. And now we're just going to fold the waistband so it's wrong sides together and press. And I'm going to show this to you real quick. So understitching, it does not show on your main side. So this is our main side, and I know I picked a bad spot because it's black. But the understitching, it's not visible on your main side. It's only visible on the lining side. And so it just keeps that lining from poking out and rolling. So, again, press, press, press. It makes it look really nice and professional. I know it's time consuming, but it's such an important step. I about caught a finger. Yes, bud. It's Thursday. It's Thursday, May 21st. We are at that point. Are you guys there where you're like losing track of days? Ugh. Thomas is yelling at me asking what day it is. I tend to lose track of days during sew-alongs because I like to create my blog post as we're going along. It helps me to address things. It makes it easier to like address questions, and then if somebody has an idea for something, it's easy to just incorporate it right there into the blog post as I'm going. And I like to sew it with you guys. Oh, my buttonholes don't line up. Oh well. And so I work on one day's blog post, and then I sew along live with you guys on another day and another step. And then to throw even more confusion into the mix, I'm working thirds this week, and I haven't worked thirds in 20 years, so it's all sorts of crazy over here. So we never know what day it is right now. So there's our waistband, nice crisp seam at the top. And let's find a section that we can compare these. There we go. Okay, so you can see we have the understitching on the lining side, no stitching on the main side. So now we're going to attach it to the waistband. I don't finish any raw edges on my waistband on the inside. They're not going to really fray because they're encased in that waistband, so I don't finish raw edges. So we're going to attach the waistband right sides together to the body of the shorts. So we got the middle, front. You want to pay really close attention and make sure that the buttonholes are against the main front of your pants. Shorts, whichever version. So the buttonholes are against the front, right sides together, and then match that back center with the back seam, and then match your side seams. Oh, I have a twist. Twisted my waistband when I flipped it. There we go. Okay, match your side seams, match your fronts and back centers. Make sure your buttonholes are against the front. You do all that and you should be good. Take your time to make sure you have that right. And then the buttonholes, this fold is your center front. Your top stitching line is not the center front. Don't line your buttonholes up with your top stitching. Your buttonholes should be straddling that fold line. So pay really close attention to that. And now we're going to sew that waistband in place. Okay, that's right. I like to sew with the waistband on top. I don't think it really matters either which one you do. So you should have basted the pocket lining and pocket bag to the front, so everything falls right into place. If you didn't baste, then you may have some wrestling to do to make sure that your pocket is flat. But if you took the time to do that basting, then you should just be doing a quick stitch all the way around. And then pin however much works for you. Excuse me. Clearly I'm a minimal pin user. And we're attaching this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, or standard seam allowance here. Oh. Well, that's fun. My pocket got caught. So, let me grab a different seam ripper. Okay. Sorry. I'll show this seam ripper to you after I... Goodness. I did really good on that. My pocket got tucked up and just... I attached pretty much the whole thing, folded in half to that seam. Alright. This is the seam ripper that I'm using. It's, goodness, Tammy might know the name of it. It's a, no, that just says can on it. I got this at the last retreat from one of the pop-ups there, and it is awesome. I think it's a Kai seam ripper, and it has the, it's not, I mean, it's sharp, but it's not going to cut you. It's like a blade. I feel like a makeup tutorial now. Do you see that blade? And you just rake it down the seam, and it doesn't rip the fabric or cut into the fabric or anything. You rake it down there and it just releases it right like that. So, okay, where were we? There we go. All right. Make sure that pocket's nice and flat. And away. Seam line up. Back in business. Boom. Alright, we made it. Yay! So our waistband is attached. Our pockets are flat. And so I'm just going to run it through the serger real quick to finish up that raw edge. Hopefully I don't need that anymore. That we don't need. That we don't need. Sorry. Dropping tools and everything all over the place. Okay. There's our waistband completely attached, and now we're just going to flip the waistband up and press the seam allowance downward. If you want, you can certainly top stitch the seam allowance down. Completely up to you on that. If you do choose to do that, I would do it before inserting the elastic, just to make it a little bit easier, and then you're not fighting with this fabric being bunched together. All right. There we go. Don't those look nice? It's just so nice and clean. Alright, I'm going to give it a quick press up in the front here. My buttonholes are a little crooked, but that's okay. We'll live with that. So there, my buttonholes are lined up with that seam. And so now, oh, I do need the seam ripper again. But it was a planned use, so it doesn't count against us. So now we need to insert the elastic. So I'm just going to take my seam ripper and very carefully open up the inside of the side seam of the waistband. So the under facing will keep it from opening up all the way across, so it kind of locks that stitch in place. That's where it's opened up. And then attaching it to the waistband keeps it from opening up on the bottom. So, and then it's, because it's pressed to one side, it's nice and secure. I won't even take the time to close that up. So I just open that up like that, get my elastic, that's where I put it. All right. We're going to warn you. I struggle with beading elastic into casings. My fingers don't work well. This is hard for me. This is going to be slow. This is going to be painful. I'm going to do it as fast as I can. But I'm just putting that out there, you guys. So I'm going to use a bobbin. It makes it a little bit easier. And then you just, if you've never seen one of these before, it kind of looks like a little mini set of tongs. And they have these little grippies at the bottom. And put it down onto whatever you're threading through, and then there's a ring at the top. You just slide it down to lock it into place. So it gives you a little bit of a grip versus, like, you know, a safety pin that a lot of times is used. So now I'm just going to take this, thread it into that hole, and cross my fingers that this goes smoothly. Yep. Alright. And then with the board shorts fabric has that kind of slick, satiny feel on the inside, and so it's hard to grab that bodkin. There we go. I don't know if you can hear Thomas. He's playing video games and it's getting a little crazy. So I try to keep the elastic flat so it doesn't twist, because I don't want to have to do that. Have to straighten out the elastic too. So I just gather a little bit at a time and push it down. And the elastic fits nice and snug, which I like the look of. I appreciate the look, but it just, boom, there we go. Hey, yay! Makes it harder on me to thread it. All right, we're getting there. Yay! Ooh. I'm halfway. Yay. Oh, no, not a comment. It was I can see when people join. I got excited there. I was like, oh, I can see a comment. I can't see a comment. I promise I'm going to go through them afterwards and reply to anything that I need to. Boom. And if you guys have tips on this, man, share them. Share them. I know that there's other threading tools, and maybe I need to look into that. Look into other options, because I love notions. Okay, I'm getting it. There we go. Making sure it's nice and flat, not twisted. Little hand exercise there. I hope this is not painful for you guys to watch. Alright, I think I can get the rest. Get all the way to the end. Ooh. Okay, 2 seconds.
Turn it off. Everybody can hear you on it. Turn it off. We're done.
Okay, sorry everybody. Alright, I pulled my bodkin out. My elastic is still in here. So, I'm a pro at this. Open it up. I'm holding my elastic in place so it doesn't slide out. And now I'm going to shove the bodkin back into the casing. It's so close too. Alright. Alright, so now the trick is to grab the elastic and not grab the waistband. There. And then slide the circle back. Yay! Alright. Let's work this fabric down. Alright, we're really close. Like I said, threading elastic is not my forte. Alright, just a little bit farther. I hope you're cheering for me. Alright, let's see if we can do this and not pull it off again. It's like the slingshot. Oh, come on. There it is. Yay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get that extra fabric worked out. I feel like my elastic did eventually twist. So before I sew those ends together, I'm just going to go through and make sure, like right there. You guys see how it's bunched weird right there? I think it's twisted right there. So I'm just going through and feeling it, making it lay nice and flat in the same direction. Oh, it pulled out. Or pulled back in. Pulled in some direction. Alright, let's get this. Alright. We are so close. Sorry guys, I had wished that I had done more of a step out. I think that's what they're called, breakout on this one, but I didn't have another pair that needed a waistband. Okay. That's all good. Get this back out of here. Okay. Undo that bobbin. Whew, kind of beat up my elastic in that process. I still feel like it's twisted. Sorry, because it's needs to be top stitched, I want to check it one more time to make sure it's not twisted up, because that would just make all of this so much more difficult. So I'm just taking the elastic and redistributing the fabric all down the shorts. Okay. Do not feel like it's twisted. Alright, we're good. Yay! Whew! That was a workout. Not gonna lie. Now I'm gonna take my scissors first and clean that up a little bit. I'm gonna overlap my elastic and then close it up with a zigzag stitch. So you're gonna overlap about a ½ inch to an inch. That is not a zigzag stitch. So some machines do not like to sew through elastic. I had a machine like that and it was terrible. It was a fight. And I finally figured out that I needed to switch to a stretch needle to sew through the elastic. And I guess it makes sense. I mean, all that, I'll show you my big messy zigzag. All that elastic in the elastic waistband, I mean, I can see how that you would need a special needle. This machine is not so finicky, and so I can get away with my universal needle. So if you do struggle with skip stitches or a bird's nest on the bottom of your elastic, try switching to a stretch needle. It might be the ticket. Oh my goodness. Come on. Elastic can sometimes require a lot of patience. You guys thought it was going to be the buttonholes that was difficult. Oh, this is what's difficult for me. It's getting that elastic in place. And just because it's hard for me doesn't mean that it's going to be for you. This is just my nemesis. I always struggle with getting elastic in. Okay, I think we're there. Yay. Alright, I'm just redistributing all the gathers to make it nice and even. Where the waistband rolled a little bit, I'm reworking it so that that seam is on top of the elastic. And then I'm going to show you, that's where I threaded the elastic through. So you can see how it's all closed up nicely and everything. I'm not going to worry about closing it. I'm not going to sew it shut. It will stay shut with the top stitching. If you want to close it, I would just recommend doing a quick ladder stitch to bring those together. Or what you can do is a zigzag stitch directly over the edge. Either one of those will close that up nicely, but really the top stitching is going to keep it closed and everything in place. So now for our top stitching. Let's continue with that pop of pink thread. So your top stitching is going to create a casing for your drawstring. And you're just going to use a straight stitch to do it. And lengthen your stitch. I'm going to go pretty far. I'm going to go all the way to a 4 for this. And you're going to, I'm going to turn, I don't have a free arm sewing machine, so I have to turn mine inside out to do this. Making sure that elastic's distributed one more time. And then I like to start on the side and just a 1/2 inch down from the top of the waistband. We're going to sew. So as you're sewing, you're going to pull your elastic straight so that your fabric lays flat. It's not going to be bunched up. You want to be very careful that you're not pulling your fabric through your machine. You can pull the needle and cause the needle to hit the bobbin casing, and it will put a chip in it and it can throw your timing off. So be very careful not to pull your waistband through. Let your machine do that work. You're just keeping it straight. So that's our first one. Nice straight stitch across top. Now we're going to do our second one. And it's going to be about a 1/2 inch from the bottom. I actually just put the side of the presser foot along the bottom of the waistband seam so that it just runs right up against it. All the way around. Yes, it's recording, buddy.
I know.
Alright. Just working to keep my shorts flat and out of the way so I don't stitch those to the waistband. Alright, just a few more inches. Alright, there's our casing. So now, there it is. We have our twill tape, or shoestrings are good for this too. Lots of options. Cording, or there's even like elastic like an elastic tape type stuff, not fold over elastic. That could work too though. I like to tie it real quick to make sure that my length is good. And then where that trusty bob can go. Okay, this was quicker for me. I take the end of my twill tape. Can you guys see this? There we go. You can see it's just a cotton twill tape. I got this from Style Maker. And then I fold it so that I'm not pulling the end apart. And then you're just going to thread this into one of your buttonholes. That's, I should note that. You want to make sure that your buttonhole is large enough to get a safety pin or a bobbin into when you're creating those buttonholes. I guess that's an important thing to mention. So I'm just working that through just like we did the elastic. So it's going right in that casing that we made top stitching the elastic in place. I really like the look of this. It works nicely. If you don't want a functional drawstring, I am very good at sewing buttonholes on and not opening them, or sometimes I don't even sew a buttonhole on. And I will just lay the twill tape, like pretend the finger is a waistband. I'll just lay the twill tape on top right in the middle, and then I'll just straight stitch in two places about 1/2 inch apart, and then tie it for a faux drawstring. It just gives that look of it, but then you don't have the threading to do. Or if you're short on drawstring, you don't have any, or you don't have much. Or I do it with kids' clothes a lot too. I lost the end. There it is. I was going the wrong way. I do it with kids' clothes a lot too, and then they're not pulling it out and creating lasso. Okay, that did not interrupt anything. Good. Or I will tack the back of the drawstring into place too, so that it doesn't get pulled out in the wash or anything like that. Okay, there we go. Boom. We made it. Yay. So I just need to feed the rest of it in. Like that. Whew, I feel like I've just got a huge workout today. Alright, so it's not completely even yet, but that's okay. Now, I just take and do a quick slip knot at the end, and then just trim that excess off. Just like that. And then I don't have to worry about the ends fraying or anything. So I don't do a quick slip knot tutorial. Make a loop, tuck the end in, and then just pull. And then you can slide it down. Just like that. And then I trim really close. And then it won't fray. And then we just make it cute and tie it. And ta-da! A drawstring elastic waistband. And then inside is all nice and clean. And that's it. I missed a spot right there. We're going to take a stitch. I'm going to show you guys. I had a section. Can you see that little hole right there? I had a section not line up right. So what I'm going to do is just fold that over. instead of, you know, unstitching everything and all that. Boom. Can you see how I gradually took a larger seam allowance and took up that piece that I missed? All right, we're getting there. I really like these as board shorts, so these are going to be fun. So tomorrow I'm going to walk you through sewing the cuff. I have one cuff done, and we will also boom, 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 go over our jogger cuff, and then the hem of the skirt we're going to go over also tomorrow. So lots to do tomorrow. A little change in the blog schedule. Getting thrown into thirds unexpectedly this week. I've spent more hours of my day sleeping than I anticipated, and I was off work, so totally threw a loop in my whole schedule. So I'm a little bit behind with the hacks that I wanted to do for this, so I'm going to share my hack posts over the weekend, so I'll get those all wrapped up for you. And I have a fun skirt planned where I have the shorts and this knee-length skirt merged together, and I was going to do some joggers, some knit joggers also, and we already do have a post on the blog if you want to do a cuffed jogger instead of the elastic, but I was going to just do a quick tutorial with some pictures and stuff for that. The tutorial that's up there right now is just some quick verbiage, so yeah, look for those this weekend. I will be back tomorrow. Will be our last live at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time again. And we'll go over all of the hemming. We'll hem the skirt vents, the standard hem, the cuffs. We'll go over all of that tomorrow. So thank you very much. I'm sorry that I could not interact with your comments tonight, but I'm going to go through after I sign off here and read them and react and answer and all of that stuff. So thank you, Tammy, for helping out with that tonight. I will talk to everybody tomorrow. Bye.